Part 1. They gave me away because I was a boy. My parents gave me up for adoption when I was a child because I was a boy. And now, 20 years later, they've reached out to ask me for money. I'm 25 now. My story begins when I was 6 or maybe even at birth. I was the third and youngest child in the family. My parents weren't rich, but they earned enough to support 3 children. We lived in a small town, in a house my parents inherited, which helped cut down our living expenses. My grandparents owned a farm that covered much of our food needs. My father worked as a truck driver and came home every 3-4 days. My mother was a waitress. They already had 2 daughters. When my mother got pregnant with me, I was unplanned. And I guess it's easy to understand what kind of feelings parents have when an unplanned baby comes along. Of course, I didn't know any of this as a child. But over time, I started to sense things. The realization that I was unwanted was, to put it mildly, painful. My parents wanted to get rid of me, but the doctor convinced them not to for health reasons concerning my mother. They especially wanted a girl. The reason was simple: my mom hoped I could wear my older sister's clothes, which would save them from buying new ones. My sisters were just a year apart, so they wore the same size and easily swapped clothes. They enjoyed it, but when I was born a boy, my parents were disappointed. They hated me. They dressed me in girls' clothes and even sent me to school wearing my sister's worn-out uniform. I was so ashamed. Even though I was still very small, I clearly remember being bullied for wearing a girl's outfit and having long hair. If I complained, my mother would beat me. I grew up hearing only insults and harsh words from my parents, most of which I didn't even understand due to my age. When I started understanding them, I began to hate them. My dad was a bit better than my mom, but he was hardly home and was unpredictable. Some days, he was neutral. Others, he was just as cruel or worse. I won't pretend I was a model child. Once I realized how differently they treated me compared to my sisters, I began to rebel. My sisters got the best of everything. I got their scraps. I started resenting them, believing as a child that they were the reason I was miserable. I acted out. Of course, I was punished for it, sometimes quite harshly. I had to make my own breakfast. I wasn't even given dinner. I was only 6 years old. Part 2. The Turning Point and Adoption. There's one episode one remember especially vividly. I think it was the turning point of my life. One day or maybe a week, I don't remember exactly, I was badly bullied at the playground for looking like a girl. When I got home, I saw that my mother had bought new holiday clothes for my sisters. I snapped. I grabbed scissors and shredded the clothes into ribbons. It wasn't out of anger, it was desperation. I was hurting. I was tired of being mocked because of my parents. But instead of understanding my pain, they saw it as a mortal sin. They decided to give me up for adoption. They waited a month, but no one wanted me. Their anger turned on me. They kept telling me I was worthless, unwanted. I often heard my mother say, if I'd gotten an ultrasound and found out it was a boy, I wouldn't have given birth. Those words haunt me to this day. They hated me just for being a boy and I couldn't do anything about it. Eventually, my dad talked to some relatives and friends. He knew a man in a nearby town who owned a food truck with his wife. They were even poorer than us, but they desperately wanted a child. They were in their 30s and had been trying for over a decade. My father offered them to adopt me and they happily agreed. I remember when he told my mother and sisters the news. They were thrilled to finally get rid of me. My dad warned that the family was poor and that I might not go to school. My mom rolled her eyes and said, "Who cares? Just drop him off tomorrow." I stood in the corner, clutching a curtain. Despite all the hate, it hurt and scared me to leave. My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't cry aloud. They were so happy they didn't even notice me. My dad walked over, patted me on the back, and said, "Pack your things. Tomorrow morning we're going to your new family." I burst into tears, but quickly realized no one cared. So I just went to my room and started packing, praying this new family would be kinder. The next day, my father drove me to the next town. I don't remember what I felt, probably shock. Their house had only one room, but they turned a closet into a bedroom for me. I didn't mind. At least they tried to give me my own space. I'd never had my own room or even a bed before. My sisters had beds. I slept on a fold-out cot in the corner of their room. This new space was smaller, but it was cozy. My new parents, Mary and John, were kind and caring. But I came from a traumatizing home and didn't know how to react to love. I'd seen parents hug their daughters, but had never felt that myself. I didn't trust them. I thought their care was temporary. I was scared to bond with them, afraid they'd abandon me too. Childhood trauma does that. It took months for me to understand that they truly loved me, that it wasn't fake. That year I didn't attend school. The adoption happened mid-academic year. But Mary and John promised I'd start next year, and I saw them working extra hours to save money for my education. I started to feel something for them and love them back. In the end, the adoption turned out to be a blessing disguised as punishment. My biological parents never contacted me again. Honestly, I was relieved. Because here, I was accepted for who I was, a boy. Part 3: Growth, Business, and the Return of the Past. Mary and John were incredibly hardworking people. They worked 14-16 hours a day at their food truck, which was parked right outside their house. So I wasn't left alone while they worked. I could see them from my bedroom window. Eventually, I started spending my days in the truck, helping however I could. Once I was accepted into school, I focused fully on my studies, but I still helped out at home in my free time. By the time I was just over 10, I was already working the register with John. I was good at math, and from a young age, I started to understand business and bookkeeping. After high school, I wanted to take over the food truck, but they insisted I go to college first. They paid for it out of their own savings. They were getting too old and weak to keep working as much. I wanted to take care of them the way they took care of me. But they told me they'd manage a few more years and that I needed to get my degree. I chose business and accounting because I ultimately wanted to become an entrepreneur. Graduation day was the happiest day of my life. John and Mary were overjoyed. They even invited my biological parents to the ceremony. But they didn't show up. After college, I wanted to run the food truck and let Mary and John retire. But they had other plans. They'd saved up a decent sum and handed it over to me. I was stunned. They said they didn't want to tie me down to their business and gave me the money to start something of my own. I didn't want to waste it, so I put my business knowledge to use. I started looking for a small local diner in a good location that was struggling with sales. I offered to lease one under a profit-sharing model. After a few rejections, I finally found the right place. I renovated the location from scratch, revamped the menu to suit millennials and Gen Z, and focused on top-notch customer service. Sales skyrocketed. Within a year, I doubled the investment. 4 years later, I had 3 successful CAFs in the city. I moved Mary and John into a spacious apartment, and I found myself a small place. I'd been living with them until then. I tried convincing them to get rid of the food truck and enjoy retirement, but they insisted on continuing. They saw it as their life's work. When I left my biological home with just a suitcase, I couldn't have imagined that I'd one day graduate from college, let alone run a CAF network in the city. And then, last month, something happened. It was a regular day at work. I was manning the register at one of my CAFs when I saw a familiar face. It felt like I'd seen a ghost. It was my biological father. I hadn't seen him in nearly 20 years. He looked pale and weak. With a wide smile, he walked up to me and hugged me. There were customers in the CAF, so I said nothing and led him to the back. His face instantly brought back all the horrible memories of my childhood. If my biological parents hadn't suddenly reappeared in my life, I might not have written this story in such detail. My father said he was proud of what I'd achieved. I didn't know how to respond. I just stood there, stunned. He said he was passing through and had met John, who told him about my business. Then he added that he'd bring my mother to visit on the weekend. I didn't say anything, and soon he left. After work, I went to John and told him I didn't want anything to do with my biological parents, the ones who abandoned me just because I was a boy. They knew what they'd put me through. I wanted to hide somewhere for the weekend, but Mary gently insisted that maybe I should forgive them and move on. I agreed to meet them, but only on the condition that Mary and John would be there with me. Part 4: The Family Reunion and the Price Tag. And so, my biological parents came to John and Mary's home. I expected an apology for what they had done. But let me tell you, they didn't show even a hint of regret. Instead, they started listing all the good they had done for me. My mother said I should be thankful they had found such amazing adoptive parents for me, people who raised me well and made me into a successful man. I was stunned. I wanted to say everything I felt, but Mary gently squeezed my hand, a signal to stay calm. So I simply said, I'm grateful that John and Mary became my parents. The meeting, to say the least, was uncomfortable. The next day, my mother called. I didn't recognize her voice, and how could I? It was the first time in 20 years she'd called me. She asked me for money. She explained that my father had lost his steady job and had been doing temporary work for a few years. And now she'd been let go, too, because no restaurant needs a 50-year-old waitress, she said. They were struggling to make ends meet. I asked how much she needed. She said $20,000 would be enough. She had borrowed that much from friends over the past few months to pay for food, and now needed to pay them back. But she had no money. I told her I'd think about it and call her back. And here's the thing. As much as I hated them, I still felt uncomfortable at the thought of people asking for help and being turned away. Part of me wondered if she was just trying to manipulate me. But what if they really were in trouble? Would I feel guilty for not helping even after all they had done to me? I had the money, but did they really deserve it? Update 1. The first and last chance. Thanks for all the comments and support regarding the $20,000. The responses were divided. I talked it over with Mary and John. Mary was glad I was thinking about helping, but warned me to be careful. John said it was my money and my decision, but he had the same concerns I did. What if they were just playing with my emotions? I thought about it for a long time and finally decided to give my biological parents a first and final chance. I transferred the money to my mother's account. For a moment, it actually felt like a relief. I had helped my family, despite how they had treated me. But I was wrong, or rather, I was right all along. I feared they would start using me. And that's exactly what happened. A week after the transfer, my mother called again. I answered, conflicted. She thanked me for the help, then said, "Your sisters want to see you. When can you meet?" At that moment, I thought maybe they truly wanted me back. I know my parents had done terrible things to me and I hated them, but I'd never hated my sisters. Maybe as a child I acted out toward them, but as I grew older, I didn't hold anything against them. It wasn't their fault. Sometimes I even wondered if my parents gave me away not out of cruelty, but because they were poor. I told my mother we could meet that coming Sunday, and that I could drive to them. But she immediately interrupted me. "Why don't we meet somewhere else instead?" I didn't think much of it and agreed. She said she'd send the time and place later. After the call, something about it felt off. Why didn't she want me to come home? Sure, the meeting location didn't matter that much, but if you're seeing your son for the first time in years, wouldn't it make sense to invite him home? Eventually, she sent me the address. It turned out to be one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. I didn't realize it right away. I was still too caught up in the thought that they hadn't invited me home. Part 5. The dinner that said everything. When I arrived at the restaurant, they were already there. My sisters immediately jumped up and hugged me, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt happy to see them again after so many years. We were chatting and laughing until the menus arrived. That's when they started ordering, and not just anything. They deliberately picked the most expensive dishes. When someone asked my father what he wanted, he smirked and said, "Order the most expensive. My son's a big man now." If Mary had said something like that, I'd have felt proud. But coming from my biological father, it sounded disgusting, petty, and manipulative. I just sat there, watching them stuff themselves on my dime. And yes, I paid the bill. A million thoughts ran through my head, including just walking out before paying. But that felt too extreme. So I made myself a promise: I would never fall into their trap again. I stayed cold and distant the rest of the evening. I doubt they even noticed. And no, they never invited me home. Instead, my older sister asked, "So where's your wife? Are we meeting her next time?" I gave a stiff smile and said, "Nowhere." Then I said goodbye. When I got home, I told Mary about my greedy family. She was shocked. She's an independent, kind woman, and none of it made sense to her. She told me to stop being a fool, stop letting them use me, and focus on my real life. I listened. A week went by. My sisters called, I didn't answer. Then my mother. I ignored her too. 2 months passed. The calls stopped. I think they finally got the message. I don't want them in my life. Update 2. One last attempt. Hi again. Thanks for the continued support. As I said earlier, I stopped responding to calls from my sisters and biological parents because I realized all they wanted was my money. It's been nearly 5 months. Yesterday, my mother called again. I saw the caller ID and, without thinking, picked up. She started with small talk asking about work, life, pretending to care. It was so fake I couldn't stand it. I cut her off. "What do you want?" She sighed and said, "Your sisters had to drop out of college. Your father couldn't afford tuition anymore. We were hoping you could help them go back." I was furious. She tried to calm me down, saying, "They're your sisters, your family, you owe it to them." I was at work and didn't want to ruin my mood, so I hung up. That evening, she called again. I ignored a few calls, but eventually picked up just to shut it down. She got straight to it. "Your sisters are so happy they might be able to return to college. So how should we arrange the payment? Will you cover it all up front, or should we go semester by semester? I think it's better if you just send the full amount to me. I'll handle the payments. That way, you won't have to worry about it." I laughed. "Whoa, slow down, lady. I'm not paying anything." She clearly wasn't expecting that. "So you don't want to pay all at once? Fine, we can do installments." I repeated, "I'm not paying anything. Not now, not ever. Their education is not my responsibility, especially after you gave me away and never once checked on me. You only reached out because you think you can squeeze money out of me." She exploded. "Don't forget who gave birth to you. You only exist because of us. Your father found you great adoptive parents, and now, when it's time to repay us, you just turn your back. You owe your family, your parents and sisters." I could have said a lot, but I realized none of it would matter, not to people that selfish. So I said, "Yes, I owe everything to my parents, John and Mary. They deserve all the thanks for my success. And who are you? You don't have a single document with my name, not one photo of me, and honestly I don't even know who you are." She began screaming and hurling insults, but I calmly said, "Wrong number, ma'am," and hung up. Call me whatever you want, selfish, heartless, cold. But I'm not giving away my hard-earned money to people who were never my family. They gave me up when I was 6. And by the way, in case anyone's wondering why I refer to John and Mary by name instead of calling them mom and dad in these posts, I do call them mom and dad in real life. Not immediately after the adoption, but after they gave me everything: a home, education, love. I bonded with them. The names here are just for clarity. John and Mary are my real parents. As for my biological ones, I don't even have names for them. They don't exist to me. Story 2. Part 1. She will never be my mother. How can I, a 24-year-old guy, make my 52-year-old father and his 38-year-old wife, who is not my mother, leave me alone and stop forcing a relationship I never wanted? My mother died when I was 14. We were very close, and I took her loss extremely hard. I still miss her every single day. My father, on the other hand, didn't seem to spend much time mourning. Within 6 months, maybe even 1, he was openly dating the woman who is now his wife. I'm almost certain he was cheating on my mother. 4 months after Mom died, the woman moved in with us. And 9 months later, on my birthday, of all days, they announced their engagement as a gift. Of course, I didn't take it well. I threw a fit, tossed the birthday cake they got me, and left the house. I was gone for several days before they nearly filed a missing persons report. In the end, they forced me to come home. They tried to erase everything that reminded me of my mom: photos, keepsakes, anything with her memory. I saved what I could and hid a few more things away. They banned me from mentioning her or celebrating her birthday. They tried to make me call my father's new wife Mom. I never did, and when I called her by name, she'd just ignore me. She introduced herself to others as my mother, and every time, I corrected her. Eventually, I stopped talking to her at all unless absolutely necessary. And even then, I gave the shortest answers possible. My dad got angry every time I didn't call her mom, didn't say her name, or introduced her as my father's wife. When I was 16, I went 2 full weeks without speaking to either of them, because they said I was ruining the harmony of our family. They cracked first. 15 days of complete silence broke them. At 18, I moved away for college and kept contact with them to a minimum. By 21, I'd stopped visiting entirely. I got engaged to my girlfriend. She knew the whole history and supported me completely. When my father found out I was engaged, he didn't even know I'd been dating. He and his wife lost it. She went on social media and posted that her son Me was getting married and how happy she was to become a grandmother. I responded simply, I'm not her son and never have been. She will not be a grandmother to my children. My father blew up. He said I was disrespecting my mother and publicly shaming her. And I said, who are we even talking about? Because I only have one mother, my real, biological mom. And the day she died, I lost both of my parents. Part 2. A baby on the way and the return of ghosts. 3 years passed. We barely spoke and then suddenly, they showed up at my house. My wife is now 8 months pregnant. I never gave them my address. But there they were, standing at my front door, saying they wanted to talk and get to know my wife. I didn't let them in. I told them to turn around and go back where they came from. But no, that wasn't enough for them. They decided to move to my city, to my state. They said they wanted to rebuild the family. His wife said she missed her son and wanted to be a good mother and grandmother. I told them, flat out, that they were delusional. Then I slammed the door in their faces. Now they've bought a house 5 minutes from mine. This is too much. My therapist told me to try expressing my real feelings, to avoid conflict, to understand their motives and inner pain. But I'd rather just change therapists. I could tolerate their existence maybe if they at least stopped trying to erase my mother from memory, as if she had never existed. I honestly don't even know who my father is anymore. Maybe he's just a stranger. My wife is trying to support me, but she doesn't know how to help. She's never dealt with anything like this before. What the hell am I supposed to do to make them understand? That woman will never be my mother. Part 3. Boundaries, Betrayal, and Locking Down My Life. Thanks for all your support and comments. I've read every single one. My wife and our unborn baby are doing well. She's exhausted from the pregnancy, but we're just a few weeks away from delivery. I fired my old therapist. I canceled all upcoming sessions, and he didn't take it well. I even ended up filing a complaint against him. My new therapist is much better. I feel heard. I feel like someone finally understands me and wants to help. Let me clarify a few details. I'm 24. My father's wife is 38. That's a 14-year age gap. My father is 52. She came into my life when I was 14 and she was 28. Some people have speculated that my father might have had something to do with my mother's death. That's not true, but I am certain he was already seeing that woman before mom died. We're currently installing a proper security system. It's taking a couple of weeks, but for now, we've got a video doorbell and a few cheap cameras. After her ridiculous "so excited to be a grandma" post and the news of our engagement going public, my wife and I shut down all social media. We're now completely offline, aside from private messengers. We found out who gave them our address. It was the husband of my father's wife's sister. We were hosting a small family dinner to go over our birth plan, and for some reason, this guy really wanted to be there even though he had no reason to be involved. While we were waiting for my mother-in-law to come home, I told everyone what was going on with my father and how it had affected us. That guy got visibly nervous. Eventually, I confronted him directly. He denied everything, but it was obvious he was lying. His wife, my father's wife's sister, finally exposed him, and he cracked. He admitted he'd been feeding them information because families should stay together and they deserve to know about their grandchild. His wife was furious. She left him and is now staying at our house. They didn't have kids, and their marriage was already rocky. I think it's over for good. As for me, I will never trust that man again. We revised our birth plan. He's out of it completely. Everything's now on a strict need-to-know basis, and all trusted parties are informed and prepared in case anything goes wrong. Getting a restraining order turned out to be harder than I thought. In our state, it depends on whether there's physical contact or threats. Technically, they haven't done anything illegal. They left when asked, and there were no threats. No one can stop them from moving where they want. As for grandparents' rights in our state, they only apply if the parents lose custody or are deemed unfit. And we have full support from my in-laws. So that's not even a concern. We can't just move away either. We recently bought this house when interest rates were low, and my wife's parents helped us with the down payment. It's small, but it's cozy, perfect for starting a family. My father and his wife can't have children. I don't know which of them has fertility issues, but I'm convinced that's why they're clinging to the idea of my child so desperately. Part 4. my letter, my terms, my family. I wrote my father a long letter. I explained, clearly and calmly, why I no longer want a relationship with him or his wife. I told him how I feel, that his wife is not my mother, and never will be. I made it absolutely clear, if I ever decide to give them a chance, it will be on my terms, not theirs. I also explained that my family now consists of me, my wife, and our future children. They are not to contact me or my wife, not directly, not indirectly, unless it's through our lawyer. And even then, the lawyer will decide what information, if any, they receive. They are not allowed to show up at our home, or at our child's future school, daycare, birthday parties, holidays, family events, barbecues, nowhere. If we see them in public, they are to ignore us completely. To us, they are nobody. If they violate this, I'll send one final warning, then file for a restraining order. Our lawyer reviewed the letter. My wife and I signed it. He signed it. It was notarized. We made several copies. The lawyer had it delivered via private courier with mandatory signature and video confirmation of delivery. So far, silence. Right now, I'm focusing on my wife and our future child. I hope I'm ready to be a dad. At the very least, I know what kind of father I'll never be.